because we've got debrief from the extreme heat, and we're going to talk about what went well, what didn't work well, and how we can improve. And I'm going to pass it over to Howie. First, I'm Casey Kula, I'm Yamhill County Commissioner. I'm going to pass it off to Howie Harkema.
And I'm Howie Harkema, president of Encompass Yamhill Valley. And thank you all for joining us today. And Casey, thank you for allowing us to do it on live stream. I appreciate that. And thank you, MCM. So I'm first going to go to Jeff Clayton to find out what kind of numbers they had at First Baptist Church in McMinnville over the weekend. So, Jeff?
Thank you. No good deed goes unpunished.
Yeah.
I get to go first. We had some remarkable numbers. We did, set against a few metrics, set against what we saw with winter hazard sheltering this last couple of years, set against really many years, many seasons of the old Sea-Wish system. Saturday we saw 25 guests, which was a pretty high number coming out of the plague times, as we are. That to us looked like, well, we're really doing some business here. We're really serving a population. And then Sunday happened. Sunday we had 45. And that is probably an undercount. There are probably a couple of folks who didn't get noted down during right around the 6 to 7 o'clock hour. There was a shift change of volunteers and also dinner going on at various occasions, and so we may have missed signing in a couple of folks. So that's probably lowballing it to say we have 45. And then Monday we had 33, which was no slouch either. So we averaged a little over 33 individual guests per day, and a fair amount of back and forth traffic, folks who would come in and cool off for a while and then head back out, and then we'd see them later on. So 101 total. And that, unusually for us, Sunday, that also included a couple of cases of mothers with kids coming in, with families coming in. So we had kids, which is a nearly unique experience for us. So it was a statement of how wide the need was, and also was, kind of fun, and also kind of poignant, if the most vulnerable of the vulnerable were getting services, then we're doing it right.
Carrie?
Can you talk a little bit about what it looked like in your facility? This was in your great room?
It's in what we call the social hall downstairs in the old wing of the building, which is basically a 3,500 square foot rectangle. Thanks to the eldritch genius of our building super, who can do stuff with HVAC that I'm not sure actually really obeys the laws of physics. He was able to just pour the cold air into that space to basically sort of isolate it and make it not frigid, but really pretty cool. Probably a good 10 degrees cooler than the rest of the building, even the interior of the building. So it was a busy space. We had a lot of back and forth traffic on Saturday. Each day kind of had its own character. We had more folks who stayed in on Sunday and kind of came in waves. We'd have sort of the same batch of people for multiple hours, and then they almost would trade off with a second batch of people who came in for another span of time, and like that. Not Sunday, but Monday, we saw more folks for the duration, especially through the afternoon, folks who, especially our folks outside who, it barely got below 90 that night in McMinnville, who had a miserable experience of being out. People hadn't been able to sleep, and now they were in this cool space, with services provided, with some comfort, a little refuge, a little quiet, and slept for many hours just to try and catch up on what they'd lost that night before.
So
So
did you have chairs or mats, or what kind of stuff did you guys have?
yes, we had tables with chairs out. We brought out mats when they were needed for folks who needed them for support if they were sleeping. I mean, there's a few folks, especially from our population of friends and neighbors who are outside, who are sort of more comfortable kind of in a quiet corner just by themselves. But for the folks who needed mats, we have mats. We actually bought a new set this last winter hazard season, so they're still fairly new and in good shape that they were able to use. And we had tables with chairs around them, and a fair amount of spacing, but also a recognition, especially for our regulars, that a lot of them congregate and socialize together on a regular basis anyway, and also a priority that we considered that heat exhaustion and heat stroke are more pressing issues for us at the moment than possible viral spread.
Great. And then are there any other questions for Jeff? And when we go around, if you can just remember to introduce yourself too, just brief.
Yeah, I'll come back around and do that. My name's Jeff Clayton. I run the sheltering operations at First Baptist of McMinnville.
And then Jeff, one question I had was, is there anything that you would do differently for next time?
Things we would do differently. Well, there are some process do-si-dos that we kind of improved over the course of the weekend as we began to see how many people we were seeing at one time, what kind of sort of ancillary services we were providing and why. I mean, we came in with a very lean, very basic model of we want to keep people cool and we want to keep them hydrated, and other things are sort of nice to haves rather than kind of essential additional services. So we kind of modified that as we went. I think we do a little bit more deliberate feeding this time around, especially for the folks who are in for a long time. We'd love to look at the opportunity to pair this up, especially if it happened on a weekend, with some other service provision here and there where possible, getting in touch with other ways that they could benefit from community support. We probably buy a little more Gatorade. We went through our supply, and that was the big hit. That was the favorite. That was what everybody wanted and hoped for when they came through the door. And we had a lot of fairly dramatic and sometimes humorous thank yous for bringing out a cold bottle of Gatorade that was still dripping from the cooler it had come out of. So, yeah.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. And I do want to note that Kenna West, the city manager for Willamina, said that they had water and Gatorade available in the library, and that it was so popular that they're going to make it a permanent feature of the city hall and library landscape.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yes. Okay, back to Howie.
Thank you very much, Jeff, and thank you, Rebecca Swee, and all of the people at Cooperative Ministries that made the Gatorade and all of that happen for FBC very much. I'd like to move on to Kara in Newburgh Emergency Center and talk about the numbers and what they found and what they'd like to do differently next time.
Of course. So I'm Kara DeViti. I'm the director at the Newburgh Emergency Shelter. So we are a nightly shelter on a normal basis. So Wednesday night until Monday morning are our normal operating hours. So with the cooling center, we open during the day. It was most days 1 p.m. to 7:30ish, and then our nightly shelter staff would take over at 7:30. So we saw mostly our normal folks that came. We had a couple of people that showed up that we've never met before. I think for the first day for the cooling center, we had only 4 people. And then we had all of our nightly folks come in at 7 or at 8 o'clock when the shelter opened. And then they stayed throughout the remainder of the cooling center and then nightly shelter. So we saw a total of about 14 guests. And we have 13 twin beds in the house. So we maxed out our shelter. Our Gatorade was also a big hit. Providence went ahead and supplied all the Gatorade and water, so that was great. Our community also provide all the ACs. I reached out to community members on Facebook, asked if anybody had air conditioners. It was pretty amazing. We had 2 that were actually donated to us to keep, and then 3 that were loaning, that were borrowing. So that was pretty great. And then I had the city of Newburgh was able to install them at the house. And then also with food, because we always have dinner and breakfast served to our guests every day that we're open. Well, now we tried to get a little bit more food, more of a late lunch type of thing. And so community members also donated that. I had, throughout the weekend, actually, dinner was donated from community because it was so hot. We didn't want to cook in the kitchen. So we had, every night somebody donated. Gym 100, we had Abby's Pizza. We had one lady that called every restaurant she could think of and they all closed early. So she ended up going to Fred Meyer and getting like fried chicken and potato salad. So that was great. So I think overall it went really well. But we saw about the same numbers as we normally do for our nightly shelter. Nothing significantly increased. One thing I do want to note is that we normally close on Monday nights, but we stayed open because we had one of our volunteers didn't want to put out our guests because one had heat exhaustion, so an ambulance was actually called for that guest. He's fine. He stayed at the shelter, and then his girlfriend was pregnant, so we didn't want to put either of them back out on the street in the heat. So we stayed open an extra night, which is rare. So that was pretty great. I think that was it.
Thank you, Kara. That was a great update. Do you find that you would do anything different next time besides scrambling for the air conditioners?
Definitely would check the weather report ahead of time, and I like to be prepared. So I think I would get everything set up, meals, planned, everything beforehand instead of rushing to do it all either the day of opening, which the air conditioners were installed the day that we opened for the cooling center. So that was stressful. And then the food stuff too. I would do that in advance instead of asking each day.
I'm going to go over to Rick Rogers, the mayor of Newburgh, real quick, and then go ahead, Carrie.
I just wanted to do a quick follow-up question for Kara. So you said that the window AC units, you had some that were donated and some that were loaned. Can you tell how many you added to your stock and maybe how many you need so that each of your rooms could have one?
Yeah, so actually the Dan with the city is going to, I think, work on getting 2 window units for us. It'll belong to the city, but we are able to use them. Currently, we have 1 small unit that was donated to us that we don't have to give back, and then we have 1 large window unit that we have to return. And then Matt, that's on this call, he donated 1 portable unit, and then we have 2 other portable units that have to be returned. So basically right now, currently we have 1 small window, 1 portable that was donated to us. And then we're working on the city's giving 2, and then YCAP can possibly get another portable unit or 2.
And how many rooms do you have that you would
We
need?
have 5 bedrooms, 2 living rooms, and a kitchen. Yeah, we have 2 living rooms downstairs, a small little office thing, and then a larger bedroom. And then upstairs we have 4 bedrooms, 3 on the smaller side and then 1 rather large one.
Okay, so you have 1 small and 1 large that are now your own, and then you're sort of working out some things with the city to see if you can have a long-term lease on.
Yeah, so we have 1
Okay.
small window unit and 1 portable unit.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other
We'll need to
questions
figure out this for the next round.
for Kara? Any other questions for Kara? Rick, in Newburgh, would you talk about the scramble that we did to get the other 2 AC units from the Restore and additional volunteers, please?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. You know, Howie, that was thanks to your getting the word out. That was very helpful. Carol, I just wanted to say that you, my friend, are a blessing to this community, and just cannot thank you enough. And I'll say this. I don't know that I necessarily have the jurisdiction to say this, but I'll do it anyway. If you need more than 2 units, or if we want to look into central AC, let's talk about that too, because I think the city has some funds that we could help with that. And then, yeah, and I will keep an eye out again at the Habitat Restore. If any more units come in, I don't expect to see any in the next couple days. I think they're pretty valuable right now, but in the future, we'll certainly keep an eye out. But again, you know, everybody, thank you for what you did to rally for this, and really greatly appreciated. So thank you.
Casey, I'd like to come back to you because I know that you inquired if Representative Gomberg would like to speak.
Yes, I was just going to invite, I checked in with Representative Gomberg. You know, he represents part of Yamhill County, but also the coast. So he sees a lot of people doing a lot of good work. And he is also freshly off of legislative session. So Representative Gomberg, if you have any thoughts on cooling centers and this really extraordinary and catastrophic heat wave and legislation, welcome.
Well, thanks so much. Thanks everybody for your good work during this this difficult last week. My best advice is come to the beach. We're 30 degrees cooler out here, and I don't mean to make light of the situation. You know, the fascinating thing about this district is it stretches from Falls City through Grand Ronde, Sheridan. Grand Ronde was posting 111 degrees, and out here at the beach, it was in the low 70s. So, Commissioner, I do not want to cut short your important conversation about the heat wave. There's important work being done, and I really very much appreciate it. I'd be happy to give you the Reader's Digest overview of the last legislative session, which adjourned on Saturday night. Is this a good time for that, or would you like to come back to me?
Perhaps let's, Howie, let's keep going with, if Representative Gomberg is patient, let's make sure that we hear from everybody. And I also want to note that Marianne Lucas and Sarah Frost from Willamina and West Valley have been instrumental in getting water and Gatorade out to West Valley community members. So thank you to them.
Then I'd like to ask Courtney Terry to introduce both of them and explain what it is that they were able to do over the weekend.
Sure. I'm doing the one thing you're not supposed to do, and that is I'm in the car right now. But so I will speak really for McMinnville, and we were expecting, and given our hours have been kind of so different during the pandemic, for us it's just getting that, like, yes, the library is open, yes, you can come in and sit down again, and so I think for the next time we hit the heat like this, for us it'll just be making sure that people know, you know, we're not an overnight shelter, but if there is some place they need to come during the day, we would absolutely accommodate them. And then, so for West Valley, it was, well, first off, Marion and Sarah I sent a message and it was just done. And so we had the water bottles at both the library and the West Valley Community Campus, and Marion can kind of talk more about what they did specifically in Willem Minor, which I also, Marion Lucas, she's a Willem Minor resident, and also on the board of directors for the West Valley Community Campus. And if I listed all the things that Marion has done for the Willem Minor community, we'd be here for too long. But I'm really thankful that she stepped up this weekend, and going forward, there's going to be grants and things. But Marion, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, hi, I'm Marion. So I think one thing we noted immediately with this emergency heat wave was just a lack of places. So the West Valley Community Campus, where I'm the board, we don't have air conditioning. So while we are a giant building, you know, I came here during kind of the hottest part, and it was pretty unbearable inside. So for a minute, I was kind of trying to scramble to see if maybe we could be a location, but it doesn't really work. So I'm here basically because I'd like to try to figure out what we can do for future emergencies in our little community so that we're not left with nothing. So, you know, we put water out, you know, and we had a group of volunteers that were going around and making sure it was cold, but, you know, that doesn't really seem like enough. We don't have a huge population here, but having a place where people could go would have really been helpful. So, you know, and all of our city offices closed instead of trying to open. So, you know, the library was closed, and our library has been closed since the pandemic, but, you know, we didn't have any open available spaces for people. So how do we get our city on board? I don't know.
And I will, so Sheridan, I reached out to the American Legion, and while they weren't able to help out with a cooling center this time, going forward, they're gonna kind of develop some protocols so that the next time there's a heat wave like this that hits, the American Legion building in Sheridan should be able to open for air conditioning. But yeah, I don't really know I don't know at the VFW hall if that has air conditioning or not, but yeah, it's difficult because in a way it's just really that lack of an air conditioned building.
Well, and maybe there's a grant that we could write as the campus to get one space, you know, one of our larger spaces, the auditorium or the gymnasium, air conditioned.
I was just going to ask you, Marion, if that's something, and yeah, I definitely we should work on that.
Cool.
All right, other questions for Marion and for Courtney? All right, back to you, Howie. Thank you so much for being there and just being responsive to people in the community and worrying about them and helping them. Both of you.
I'd like to go to Mayor Linda Watkins from Carlton and find out if she knows what numbers they had at Yamhill Carlton High School.
Okay, so I've heard nothing from Yamhill. Yvette Potter and I are going to meet later on this week, and I'll probably find out more then, but I don't have anything for Yamhill right now. And Carlton, Christy Martinez, are you there? Christy, oh, Shannon is. Good, because Christy and Shannon were coordinating this stuff.
Mayor, we lost you for some reason, but you're still unmuted, but we can't hear you. But Councillor Mullen? Who's also muted?
Shannon.
Okay, I'm muted. The city of Carlton worked together with the American Legion in Carlton to open as a cooling center. Our police department did an outreach the community, to the vulnerable in our community, to make sure they're okay, advise them of the cooling center. Everyone that the police department spoke with said that they had plans in place, everything was okay. So as of yesterday morning, no one actually utilized the cooling center. But we had water available, movies, etc. So we were prepared, but no one took advantage of it.
And Shannon, did you want to put anything in?
No, I don't, but I do want to refer to our chief, Chief Martinez, in case he had any additional information he'd like to add.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. And yeah, it was for us, it was pretty quiet overall. You know, obviously we learned some things that we need to implement to make things better and offer more to the citizens. So we have digital display signs that we utilize typically for traffic, which we could put messages on for the cooling center notification. We did do some distribution of that information via social media and whatnot. But as far as beverages, we do need to add Gatorade, orange and apple juice for potentially diabetic type situations, and snacks. So there's, you know, those minor things that that can be implemented. We did proactive patrols in the parks and the water access areas. We handed out cold water to citizens that were walking down the street, or even during a traffic stop if we found there was a need. And we visited approximately 20 different residences to check in with the vulnerable population that we really felt had the potential for problems to occur. So it was, I think the citizens really appreciated that. And certainly we also had access to phone numbers and emails if anybody wanted to reach out to us for other specific needs during that period of time.
Thank you, Chief Martinez.
And Chief, can I ask you a question that's slightly off topic, and we can discuss it later if the timing is not. I'm getting a lot of questions about banning fireworks, and I figured that you might have some thoughts on that.
You know, I think the fire department collectively would like to see that happen, just because of the situation we're in and what we experienced last year. So, you know, I don't think it's collectively reached a point for the legal fireworks, but I think that'll remain to be seen as we get closer. But you know, personally, I would recommend that if we can get citizens to maybe just voluntarily back off this year to the degree that we really enhance our overall safety for our communities, that would be in the best interest of everybody.
All right, thanks for taking that one on.
You bet.
And then I wanted to know, Howie, Brennan raised a really good question in the chat. Okay.
Would you go ahead, Brennan, and ask the question to the group?
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. Hi, everyone, and thank you for all the work you guys did. I'm just wondering if there's a threshold for reopening these shelters. I know there's one for sort of when it gets cold, but what's the criteria for, hey, we need to do this again, considering we're in June and we still got a good 3 months of summer weather left?
So thus far, we haven't put that together because this was the first collaborative across Yamhill County. We will probably meet on this as somewhat of a subcommittee to figure out what those thresholds are. I would think over 95 probably. Temperature.
Would that just be any day over 95 or a series of days over 95, or what do you guys?
That's how the winter shelter used to work. It had to be X amount of days over 32 degrees. So it would be X amount of days over, say, 92 to 95.
Does
that make sense? I'd like to go to Brian Young on emergency management. Brian, you helped verify a lot of things and made a lot of great things happen. What is your take overall on this first pass of community coming together across Yamhill Valley to open cooling shelters?
My take on it is you guys did outstanding, and yeah, it was a great team effort. I watched at what all the communications that was going on, and I was very impressed with that. To go back to real quick to that last comment on spinning these things back up, you know, you might want to take into consideration watches and warnings. You know, heat watches and warnings and how they are. I saw a thing the other day that said the difference between a watch and a warning is one is we have all the ingredients to make the tacos, and two, the warning is we have the tacos made and it's time to eat now. So when do we want to spin them up might be or have those opening conversations. So getting back to this topic, you guys did awesome coming together. You know, emergency management is here for resource coordination and resource management or resource requests from the state if it got to that point. Fortunately, it didn't in Yamhill County, which is awesome. You know, but another thing that we do on the coordination piece is make those calls, as Howie mentioned earlier, and it was awesome working with you, Howie, on making those calls and just communicating back and forth on who was covering what base and just making sure that we had all of those bases covered. You know, one of those, for example, would be the senior and disability service. I can't.
Northwest Senior and Disability Services.
Thank you. Gosh, it feels like a Monday and it's Tuesday. You know, and just being able to take that burden off of you and the group to reach out to those folks, and I think I communicated quite a bit with Starla Pointer with the News Register to make sure that her information was updated and accurate, and that the website would be available for anybody and everybody, since they do rely on subscriptions. But this is an important piece that was really something that the media would partner with us on, and it worked out great. A lesson learned from internally here, I think, comes from working with Kara with the Newburgh Emergency Shelter. You know, when we have and try and get volunteers to come and respond to these incidents, you know, we have an internal process through the Sign Up Genius, which is what Kara used, and we went through the CERT Sign Up Genius, and then Kara's, how do we balance those two? So we finally just said, you know what, we're going to steer all of our folks, and I think this is what we'll do in the future in something like this. If somebody does have their own sign up, regardless of what it is, we're going to steer our members that direction to sign up directly with those resources. That way, those resources know exactly what's going on in real time, rather than going through a second or third party. You know, again, the community involvement in this was just awesome to see come together, and I missed some of the conversation on how many people were in these centers, but it sounds like they were well received and well utilized, which is awesome. So that's about all I have. I apologize, I'm a little unprepared for this, but I see Carrie has her hand raised. Yes, Carrie, it's good to see you.
Hi, Brian. Good to not see you. So my question, I just wanted clarification on the Sign Up Genius comment that you just made. So your recommendation would be, rather than have an app like Sign Up Genius, that you would direct people to individual sites for their volunteering, as opposed to kind of trying to collect them and then redistribute them.
Yeah, I would, and that's for our internal stuff here. I think if Newburgh Emergency Shelter used Sign Up Genius for their volunteer coordination, and whoever else, another shelter used something else, Facebook, we would direct our volunteers to go to those sources directly, rather than coordinating that within our office. That way, the boots on the ground know that, know real-time information.
Got it. Thank you.
Marianne?
Hi. So I have just a thought to put out there. In Willamina, we are really short in the volunteer pool. And thinking about future emergencies and collaborating within the county, I know for us it would be incredibly helpful if there was a pool of potential volunteers that we might, if we could get, if there were people who were willing to volunteer to come to Willamina. Our resources are so limited here. Everybody that volunteers is pretty stretched thin, so it's just really hard to have all the hands on deck that we need. So
no, absolutely, and you do. I guess you do have that pool in CERT. We just didn't know that Willamina or Sheridan or West Valley needed volunteers. So a phone call to us in times like this, or through Howie, if you're spinning up this type of sheltering or cooling center event, give us a shout. If we can fill it, we'll do everything we can to fill it. I'm not sure how many CERT volunteers ultimately worked in this, but in the sheriff's office, we have CERT, the volunteer response unit, the cadets on a different scale. We've got the search and rescue crews, so we've got access to a bunch of volunteers. It's just a matter of knowing where they are. So please feel free to reach out to me next time or through Howie, and we'll get together and try and figure this out for you.
That's super helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Anything else, Brian?
Yeah, I'm going to do this for Carrie. How about this? Hi, Carrie.
I shook Brian's hand today.
Yeah, it was good to see you.
It was good to smell your cigar smoke.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I was waiting for you to get off the phone. I was going to say, I don't think you've been in the office yet. Come over.
I actually have been because of the Labor Day fires.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. Well, it's more mellow here now, so.
Totally. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for your help and coordination. And I think that's a really good point about West Valley and making sure that there are folks who you just know can go out there as soon as Marion has a need.
Since we're on the topic about bringing in volunteers to different areas, I'd like to go to Pauline Metoxen, who volunteered for the whole weekend at Dundee Fire Hall, and let her talk about this as well. Pauline, you're muted.
Mute. Now am I muted?
No.
Okay. So I'd like to see a centralized volunteer coordination so that we don't end up with centers that have no volunteers. We had 0 volunteers at Dundee. So even though it could have been opened at 8 in the morning, I opened it at 1 and was there from 1 to 8 on Saturday and Sunday. We didn't have anybody come, although we had water, which I left there so the firemen could give it out if anybody showed up on Monday. But we really need to have volunteers available so that people aren't deciding, let's see, do I go home and do what I need to do? Or do we risk people not having a place to be? And I think that probably Dundee, even though it's a lovely site, is probably not the best location. That maybe we should cultivate a relationship with TVF&R and use one of the fire stations in Newburgh.
That's a great idea. What do you think?
Carrie, it looks like Carrie's taking notes. Carrie, are you taking notes?
She is.
Okay, great. Can we also add to that taking notes thing that I think that in situations like this, and maybe we can get Brian Young nudge Yamhill County Transit to essentially have like an emergency policy that says, like, we will put drivers on the road on overtime on the weekend if we have these conditions at hand. And that way, somebody from the West Valley, for example, can get in if there isn't a shelter space that's available, can get into McMinnville to First Baptist, for example. But with the weekend being such limited transit options, it feels like a need.
I think that they would be very open to that. I know I spoke with Cynthia several times, and she expressed that their service provider, First Transit, their drivers were very concerned about what kinds of resources they could refer people to. So we can just add YCTA to our list here and make sure that we tackle that emergency plan with them.
And on that,
And
point,
I am muted
I'll
at the same
happily
time.
reach out to TVFNR and see. I haven't heard back from the shelters in Newburgh how active they were aside from the shelter on College. But yeah, I'm happy to reach out to TVFNR and start that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to go to Kelly Mankey from the City Council of McMinnville and get her take on what we've been able to accomplish this first go round. Kelly? Kelly?
She's just looking for her mute button.
I see.
So we'll get her there.
Yeah.
Council president, or no, she's not council president anymore.
No, she isn't now.
Immediate past council president Kelly
Yes.
Mankey.
Maybe she has stepped away.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go to Holly. Holly?
Casey, I have absolutely nothing to say. I'm just listening with interest.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Let's see. My name is Holly Christensen. I'm with the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in McMinnville, and our project starting in June has been Sunday sandwiches to kind of fill in a void. There's no food available on Sundays. And so we're at the library giving out sack lunches, sandwich, piece of fruit, cookie, water, and this time we had Gatorade also donated. So we always forget to count people, but I'd say yesterday we had or Sunday, 25 or 30 individuals. It was very, very hot. And so some people would, one person would come and take sandwiches back for a group. One guy takes 25 sandwiches to the Motel 6, that type of thing. We saw a mother and children who the landlord capped off their water. The kids wanted to run through the sprinkler. They didn't have air conditioning. And yeah, it's just kind of awful. But and I believe they went to the Baptist cooling shelter. I felt like we definitely were serving a need. Another example is a person who rode up on his bike and said, I'm on my lunch hour from work. I'm so glad you're here. I just can't go all the way to my trailer to see if I've got any food. It's just too hot. And so he stopped and ate his lunch and went back to work. So we're just seeing, a variety of people. We also, just FYI, Jeff, I think we were supposed to take our leftover sandwiches to you, and we didn't. A woman from the soup kitchen walked up and said, if you guys have leftover food, we could use it tomorrow. So we did take it over to St. Barnabas, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. So anyway.
That's okay. I would point out also that Holly wore multiple hats this weekend because she also volunteered at our site.
Yeah.
So,
And while I have people's attention, I just have a question. And this is sort of off topic a little bit, but I encountered a young man whose glasses were broken, can't see, and I'm trying to figure out where we could, are there funds available? Is there a place for him to go to get help with glasses? Because I'm sure we could raise money, but yeah, what do you say, Howie?
The Lions Club will allow free glasses. They just have to fill out an application.
Okay, so do we know who to contact?
I'll send you an email, Holly.
Okay, and then I also need to figure out the young man's name, but I think we could do that by looking at the roster, and maybe Jeff or somebody could help me. So, okay, thank you.
Great. So I would just like to thank everybody, and Casey, I want you to join in this at some point. Casey and Carrie Martin and Pauline Metoxen and Courtney Terry are all on the board of Encompass Yamhill Valley, as well as their other duties in community. Without Casey and Carrie doing the research, we would have never gotten there. So I can't thank you enough for your participation in making all of this work and happen quickly. If we were able to do everything in 3 days, that's pretty much unheard of. And again, the contingent that we have now built is fantastic for the future, not only for cooling, but for winter shelter and heat process shelters as well. So I see this as being a win-win. I knew that the first time it was going to be a little bit tough to get everything organized, but some of the people that jumped in and helped were amazing and deserved recognition. If you haven't seen the recognition, it's on my Facebook page and multiple Facebook pages, including Encompass Yamhill Valley. I did post it in my Zoom link that we yesterday for this meeting. So hopefully all of you have been able to read that. We as Yamhill County came together in a way that I don't know has been seen before to make this happen. And everybody deserves a accolade for pulling this off so quick. So thank you all.
Thank you.
I would also say, Howie, you did a tremendous service to the community, just in your efforts to really pull all the people together and make sure that we had time for meetings and things like that. So that is much, much appreciated. I would say too that, we've had some conversations about what can we do to systematize this, and so that we can create, these thresholds, these low and high thresholds, much like the winter weather. And I'm thinking I'd like to send out a survey to people who have participated in some manner, all the partners that participated in this last piece, and maybe get some information about the kinds of resources that you had available at your site, the kinds of things you needed. But so that might give us a next step in terms of evaluating, what we have and what we need to build.
Harry, I do have, this is Rebecca Swee. I'm the program director at Saturday Morning Breakfast in McMinnville. And I got donations of Gatorade and ice from a couple of markets in town this time. However, I noticed that the market couldn't give me as much Gatorade as they wanted to because their shelves were being bought out on Friday. Ross was out of ice by Sunday. So these are things I think that since we know, or we have a pretty good indication that this will happen again, even this summer, these are things that the markets could donate, or other stores could donate ahead of time. And I think there are facilities such as Saturday Morning Breakfast has room for some. We could store things like water and Gatorade to have available for when the next time comes, rather than try to get it at the last minute, because the stores are going to be hit hard by their own customers when it's needed at those times. Ice, I'm not so sure about how we store, because, for instance, I have no freezer space for ice. I store enough food. But if everybody could put on their thinking hats, maybe we could come up with something together about how we have more ice available when we need it. But I think that many of us, well, some of us, I know I will work on it on my own to start getting donations from stores for Gatorade and water for our next time around as a way to help out, our effort.
I think that's a great idea. I would like to see us also sort of match that up with similar types of donations that we need to seek for the winter months. You know, whether that is cocoa and tea and, you know, whatever things that can be converted to hot drinks. And when you were talking about the ice, that makes perfect sense. I wonder if we have an opportunity through one of the shelters or through one of the food providers to do a grant to get an ice machine, you know, a commercial grade ice machine maker that would, just like at the hotels, so that we would have it on demand.
Yeah, I already actually looked those up online, and the various sizes and so forth, but I bet we could get one for around 2,000.
That's pretty easy, actually. So I think
I've bought a lot of ice machines in my day too. So
yeah,
have you? Have you, Casey?
Yeah, the key
I'm a
would be
farmer.
one that's reliable, that, you know, is going to perform the way we need it to. But I think it's really doable, and that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah.
Super. The option to that would, of course, be to work with an ice distributor and see if they would hold the ice for us and then give it to us as we need.
Yeah, thank you for that, Rebecca. I think that's a really good point. I do want to note that while this is successful because people were healthy and people use the spaces, and you all did a lot of really great work. I did just see that Dora Tawatian just wrote a piece about how a farm worker in St. Paul died of heat-related causes during this heat wave. So one of the things that I felt like was kind of a scramble was a last-minute translation that took a day because of various formatting and going back and forth about it. And what I hope is that we can just be really on that translation. There was some miscommunication about if YCAP was going to do it or Unidos. Getting out the Spanish language version to as many people as possible, as quickly as possible, is, I think, an important part of it. But I also want to acknowledge that we can't do everything. We still need to have things like Oregon OSHA emergency heat rules in place. So I just want to acknowledge that all of us here, all of you have done amazing work, and it is still a lot bigger than each one of us too. Is that protection level, making sure that people have the ability to get shade and shelter when they need it.
Pauline?
So several people had messaged me and asked about dogs being able to be at the cooling centers. And maybe we should add that to our flyers next time. I know my big dog nearly died yesterday because I don't have air conditioning. And 3 days was too much for him. But a number of people asked about pets, and I know that Dundee Fire Station had a no pet rule, but I don't know about the other sites. But we might add that to our list of information that we put out.
I think that's a great idea. I was worried about certain people, specifically in McMinnville, coming to any of the cooling shelters with their animals and not being let in because of it. And they won't leave their animals outside usually. So
Right.
Brought that up. Rebecca.
Right. I'm wondering if education as to the effect on animals would help. People may not realize. Just as many people don't realize the dangers for humans in heat.
I saw that some Portland sites actually, some of their shelters had large crates for dogs. And so, you know, that would also be something that would be a very inexpensive thing to provide for shelters, and they're entirely collapsible. So that you could have somebody with a dog in a crate or a cat in a crate very safely.
As a sort of first toe in the door to that, our sort of historically First Baptist Low Barrier operation has accepted animals, and we did during this. And we're also in the process of trying to equip ourselves with some more crates and with some more other useful facilities and supplies so that we can be as effective as possible for our four-legged guests as well as good ones.
I wonder if the SPCA or some other type of charity for animals might have some old crates that they could give to us or lend us.
They probably do. But, you know, there's always the option of doing a very specific drive, and you know, there's a remarkable number of those crates that people have in their garages that are not using. I have one as well, but to be able to you know, designate a month that you do a crate drive, and then we check all the restores, check all the Goodwills, put it out on Craigslist. That's what we're looking for, those donations. I think we would get a tremendous response.
Good idea.
We could also ask the Pongo Fund.
I think the awareness piece, Rebecca and Pauline, is an important piece for our animals. I think that maybe if you wrote an article for the News Register about an editorial comment, seeking this stuff out and such, that would be helpful.
And I agree. And then I want to make sure that Mayor Watkins gets her question in there.
Well, actually, it's more of a comment with the discussion about dog crates, because if you reach out to a lot of dog people, I would imagine Homeward Bound might have a lot of crates that they could find a home for. I have half a dozen of them sitting in my backyard that really need a home somewhere besides my backyard. Yeah, there's plenty of that around, and that is something that reaching out to rescues also might be a good place to look for something like that, because they're going to they get a lot of them. Or just reaching out to Petco and PetSmart, because they all have charities and they all will make donations.
Rick, did you want to say something?
So
I was just going to say that
anyway, if you need crates, let me know. I will deliver some.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Rick?
Yeah, I know that at the Restore here in Newburgh, we customarily, as we gather them, we give them to the animal shelter, the Newburgh shelter here, but we could certainly direct them elsewhere. So just let us know.
Great, we will. Casey, any last minute questions? I know we're running out of time, so.
Yeah, no, this is, I really appreciate it, Howie. I'm just really impressed by how much work everybody who was on this call did, and then all the people that they're associated with. So I really appreciate that. And I'm really glad that our emergency manager has been involved in keeping track of what's happening. I feel like that's a really important component of it, because Brian Young has access to then all the resources that ripple out from our community. But as he knows, he's very aware of the fact that he can't do it all, or even really a lot of it. He's a communicator and a coordinator. And so he needs us to continue stepping up into these roles. So thank you to him, especially for just being aware of what's happening and making sure that we're all communicating with each other. And I think that we need to make sure that we have a threshold, but we also need to make sure that we're not burning out volunteers if that we set that threshold too low, right? So I just want to be aware of that for the next round of conversations. Thank you
So
so
Brian,
much.
would you be willing to work with us on the threshold piece so that we don't burn our volunteers out?
Absolutely. Yep. You just let me know where and when, and I'll be happy to join in the conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Any last minute questions or anything?
I think we could reach out to the Pongo Fund for pet things. They're the statewide entity for essentially indigent pets.
Great. Casey?
Yeah, so thank you all very much. You know, this isn't the typical roundtable, but this is really important for us to all communicate about. I do want to note that tomorrow is the end of some mask mandates inside and capacity restrictions. And I feel like all those get a little asterisk beside them because it's not totally clear exactly what things are going away. But I hope folks will also remember how important it is to keep virus spread from continuing. So get vaccinated, talk to people about getting vaccinated. The one thing as well is that I noted in our email that YCAP has access to funding from the state and the federal government for water bills. So for Mayor Watkins and Mayor Rogers, the city of Newburgh, I realize, already works on that with YCAP, but spread the word that folks who are behind in their water and sewer bills can get help, and that YCAP is offering to work with cities on that.
Casey was
who, excuse me, is there where do I find, because we had somebody who was needing help with water bills and they were sent over in that direction and sent somewhere. I don't know where they went, but wherever they went, they were refused. So,
I'm not sure if it was my internet that was bad, but I didn't really hear you.
It's just through YCAP.
I'm sorry, can you?
Is it my computer?
Can you type it into the chat? I'm not able to hear you. I do want to note that Mayor Rogers makes a really good reminder that please encourage people to use fireworks responsibly. Sorry, Mayor Watkins, what was you
saying? Can you hear me now? Okay.
Maybe not. And apologies, everybody. Representative Gomberg had to leave early, so he was not able to do a legislative update, but I'm sure he'd be happy to give us all the gory details next week, because he also got a lot of money for our district, or for his district within our county, including some funding to Sheridan School District. And he's also on the board that will be divvying up additional funding. So we will hear from him next week, no doubt. Are there any last thoughts? All right, great. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you for your work out in the community. We will see you next week.
Thank you.